it's almost as if he's arguing with, a version of himself, the version of Trump that had argued that America was getting taken advantage of or that we were spending too much money.
Now, the White House, where Donald Trump is, he's soon to meet the president of South Korea in the Oval Office. In the last half hour and more, he's been talking to the media, having signed a number of executive orders. Now, he was asked by one reporter about the situation in Ukraine, and whether there may be US fighters over the country in the event of a peace deal.
U.S. air assets over the skies of Ukraine as part of a security guarantee. Wouldn't those U.S. airmen also be in danger?
You don't know what security guarantee is because we haven't even discussed the specifics of it, and we'll see. Number one, Europe is going to give them significant security guarantees, and they should because they're right there. But we'll be involved from the standpoint of backup. We're going to help them. And I think if we get a deal, and I think we will, but if we get a deal, you're not going to, I don't believe you're going to have much of a problem. But we'll back it up because I want to stop seeing people being killed.
Guarantee. Wouldn't those U.S. airmen also be in danger?
You don't know what security guarantee is because we haven't even discussed it. But we're in for $350 billion. Now, we make money. I don't want to make money on Ukraine. I want the war to end because I want to save all those lives. I want to just save. But just so you understand, we're no longer losing money on that thing. We were losing money hand over fist. And now we don't lose any money. Now we sell weapons to NATO. Because NATO agreed, because of me, to go to 5%, they had 2% and didn't pay. Now they have 5% and they're all paid up. So they have trillions of dollars and they give us that money. But I really want the war to end, and we're going to get it ended. To be honest, I don't blame Ukraine. I mean, if they come and ask for $100 billion, then they get it. But
have you spoken to Putin since last Monday?
Yeah, I have.
What is your conversation? Or can you share?
Every conversation I have with him is a good conversation, and then unfortunately a bomb is loaded up into Kiev or someplace, and then I get very angry about it. I think we're going to get the war done. It's tough. I thought that would be, of the 7 that I settled, I thought that would be the easiest of the group. See, you never know what's going to happen. War, strange things happen in war. The fact that he went to Alaska, our country, I think was a big statement that he wants to get it done. That was not easy for him to go to Alaska, for him to come here. But the fact that he showed up on a very successful day, it was a very successful day for other things. Because, we're also talking about missiles, nuclear. We're talking about a lot of different things. We're talking about limiting nuclear weapons. We'll get China into that. We have the most. Russia has the second most, and China has third, but China is way behind, but they'll catch us in 5 years. We would like to denuclearize. It's too much power, and we talked about that also. That's part of it, but we have to get the war over with. And if I pull that off, there's no way a Republican.
Why do you think President Putin is so reluctant to meet with President Zelensky?
Because he doesn't like him. He doesn't like him. They don't like. I have people I don't like. I don't like to meet with them. Sometimes they do like to meet with people I don't like.
So how do you get them together?
They don't like each other, really. And if we had a real president instead of a guy that got in there with a fraudulent election, if we had a real president, that war would have never happened. Putin actually said, we would like to denuclearize. It's too much power. And we talked about that also.
So that's Donald Trump speaking there at the White House just a very short while ago. We're joined by Molly Ball, senior political correspondent at the Wall Street Journal in Washington. Hi to you, Molly. Welcome back.
Thank you. Happy Monday.
It's great to have you here, Molly. What do you make of what you heard there from the president on the subject of Ukraine? I mean, and quite apart from the fact that saying yet again that American military into Ukraine amounted to $350 billion, that's simply not true. We're talking about something over $100 billion. What he did have to say there was not especially encouraging, was it, to Ukraine or Ukraine's friends?
That's right. And we see, I think, him continue to emphasize what has already been accomplished here, in potentially because it's not clear if this process has now run aground. Coming out of the Alaska summit with Putin, there was a lot of talk about how this was setting the stage for another negotiation. But since then, the Russians have been notably cool on the idea that Putin would, in fact, meet with Zelensky, as Trump has been saying that that he believes he's promised to do. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty about whether any kind of progress is going to be made going forward. And so you have the president instead emphasizing the things that have already been done. And it's almost as if he's arguing with, a version of himself, the version of Trump that had argued that America was getting taken advantage of or that we were spending too much money. So now you have him emphasizing that these weapons sales are not gifts, emphasizing the amount that NATO is spending. All of these, of course, were arguments that were made against Trump when he was the one making the argument that we should pull back from Ukraine.
Yes, and we've now heard, haven't we, heard President Trump's son, Trump Jr., talking about it's right that Putin should have a say in Ukrainian security. And this is while Russia is saying, look, they just wouldn't live with the idea of NATO member troops on Ukrainian soil in the event of a ceasefire. It leaves that so-called coalition of the willing in a corner.
Absolutely. Look, this has been the Russian strategy since the beginning, potentially since the beginning of the war, but certainly since the beginning of the Trump administration, is simply to throw up obstacles and find reasons to delay any kind of process so that the war can continue. And Trump has periodically expressed frustration that the Russians don't actually seem to want to end this war. That continues to be the case, and he continues to be frustrated by it, but it's not clear what, if any, leverage the United States has in this situation.
And just a word with you, Molly, on what the president had to say about the presence of troops on the streets of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. I heard a number of remarkable statements from the president that Washington, until very, very recently, was the most dangerous place in America. Now it's the safest.
Yeah, well, of course, neither of those things are true, but this is a big sort of symbolic showcase for President Trump, the deployment of National Guard troops to Washington. Washington is a relatively violent city among American cities, but certainly was not the most violent, and nor is it now the safest. I think it's too soon to tell whether anything has actually been achieved by this deployment. You heard Trump talk a lot about it's the first time ever we've gone 11 days without a murder in Washington. That's not true. There was a 16-day stretch earlier this year. There have been a couple of longer stretches without a murder. That's not to say that the murder rate in D.C. is good or acceptable, but the claims that the president is making about the supposed pacification of the streets here aren't true. But he clearly wants to send a message to the nation. I also thought it was interesting that he seemed to equivocate about this potential deployment of Chicago that the White House was telegraphing over the weekend. We still don't have any details about that. Even at the beginning of the administration in January, this was something they were talking about, and they still haven't done it. So it's worth following up on to try and get some clarity on if they are so gung-ho on putting troops in the streets in Chicago as well. Why haven't they done that yet?
You always sound so wonderfully level-headed, Molly. I mean, the idea of militarizing major cities in this way would be absolutely extraordinary and cause goodness knows what sort of row, if anything of the sort, would happen here. I mean, what's the feeling about that? What's your feeling about this development?
I think the politics of this are interesting and complicated. We have had, Democratic politicians advocate for a softer approach to crime for many years now. Certainly that was a big part of the Black Lives Matter movement, the criminal justice reform movement. Interestingly, one thing that nobody seems to mention anymore, that one of the major bipartisan achievements of Trump's first term was a prison reform bill that let a bunch of people out of federal prison in the name of right-sizing penalties and making the prison population less of an expense. So this is something that's been going on for years, and it's true that people in cities and across the country are frustrated with what they see as high crime rates. But DC is not a place where Trump is popular. He got 6% of the vote here in November. That's true in other major cities as well, overwhelmingly populated by Democratic voters, overwhelmingly places where Trump is not popular. So I think you may, in fact, have populations in a lot of these cities that would like to see their elected representatives conservatives, including the Democrats, do more about crime and take more punitive measures to clean up the streets, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're enthusiastic about Trump doing it for exactly the reasons you suggest, that this step of militarizing urban police forces is something that a lot of people find alarming.
Good to talk to you, Molly. Thank you so much.